Talk about being found out. Fianna Fáil are in combative mood tonight, but here's a Fianna Fáil hoax that you got rid of SHDs before Christmas. As we warned, there has been a flood of SHD applications, these build-to-rent, greedy developers trying to get in on the gold rush in our area as soon as that legislation went through here. As we warned, and you said wouldn't happen, and among other things, as well as a whole load of unwanted private developments, it's going to cause major staff problems for our local authorities who are not equipped to deal with the new regime and the old regime at the same time.
Minister.
Thank you, Oireachtas. My department is working with the County and City Management Association and seeking to define more closely the resourcing needs of the local authority planning sector, and following on from the commitment on the adequate resourcing of planning authorities in Housing for All. This review will examine a range of factors and is advancing in parallel with actions on learning and development and digitalisation of the planning code, which are also important components in delivering an effective service. Most immediately, recent legislative changes have returned large-scale residential developments to local authorities, which will involve an appropriate fee structure to ensure that local authorities can resource this function appropriately. Under Section 159 of the Local Government Act 2001, each Chief Executive is responsible for staffing and organisation arrangements necessary for carrying out the functions of the local authorities for which he or she is responsible. In this regard, the assignment of local authority staff to a particular function, such as planning, is a matter for the Chief Executive. As you will be aware, Minister O'Brien approved over 200 new staff for local authority housing delivery teams in December 2021, and these posts will increase the capacity of local authorities to initiate, manage and deliver new build housing schemes across the sector. Thank you.
Minister, since you said you abolished strategic housing developments, just on the Dunleary side of Dunleary-Rathdown, 7 new applications for strategic housing developments. Because you essentially allowed an extension for these build-to-rent, developer-led developments. And, I mean, ironically, some of your local representatives are now running around saying these are terrible developments, but the only reason they could get the application in is because you voted down our amendments to close down the strategic housing development system completely. None of these outrageous developments which are now being proposed, which are all about massively expensive build-to-rent apartments, so communities are now overrun with these things, and so are the local authorities. Because they have to deal with the strategic housing developments. The planning department are telling us in Dunleary-Rathdown they're going to be dealing with new SHD applications until well into the end of this year. At the same time, they now have to deal with large-scale residential development proposals under the new regime. They don't have the staff, and the money going in is going into the general funds, not into creating new posts.
Thank you. I have a stopwatch working here now, so, Minister.
Thank you, Oireachtas, and thank you, Deputy. In the first instance, I think we were very clear under the new LRD arrangements that the relevant fees payable will be retained in full by the Planning Authority, and obviously that will give them increased funding to manage their staffing resources, and obviously when you restore the two-stage process back in to the local authority, gives the decision closest to the local functional area, which I think is a positive move. In the second instance, you state in terms of the gold rush. I note in December 2020 there was 21 applications for pre-consultation, and it's 23 in 2021. So I would not exactly term that as a gold rush when you look at the actual facts. And I would also actually point out that in connection with decisions that were made, from 350 decisions that were made across since the inception of the SHD process on the 3rd of July 2017, that approximately 249 have been granted. So we have taken positive moves. You know, you learn from, in theory, from past issues, and we have made positive moves. I think the two-stage process will create value for local citizens to be involved in the decision-making.
since you said SHDs were gone because they were a scandal, they did nothing to address the housing crisis, they delivered expensive, overpriced rents to make money for developers, we've had 7 in December. There's murder going on in Sallynoggin, Minister, over a 9-storey, in an area where there's only 2-storey houses, a working class area, 9 stories on a tiny little site, absolutely developer-led. Another one, they had planning permission for an SHD of 150 apartments, and they've lashed in to get 300 apartments on the same thing just before Christmas, right? It's a scandal. And the local authority is going to have to pick up the pieces, and they don't have the posts. They don't have the people to deal with this, because they're going to be dealing with the SHDs and the large-scale developments, and the money goes into general funds, right? We need people in the planning departments who can actually deal with these, but the fact that we're dealing with SHDs which bypass, even though the council have to do all the work, but the board makes the decision and the public have no right to appeal. It's a disgrace.
Minister, to conclude.
Thank you, Lascian Cora. The negativity towards constructing new homes continues. In the first instance, let me respond if you could. In the first instance, I was very clearly articulated the resource base that the local authority would have. Heretofore, under the SHD process, it was shared 50-50 between the board, but the local authority now will retain 100%, which is quite significant, of the application, and that will provide resourcing to ensure that they have a robust planning department. And in tandem with that, a working group has also been established with the CCMA, which has penciled in its first meeting for February to have a look and review the staffing arrangements for local authorities in general, considering the increased workload that they will have. But they will have resources to match that from the applications that will be going in through the local authority. And a lot of the mandatory timelines, which were in the SHD process, are being adhered to now within the local authority sector, which will improve in terms of reducing further information requests, having a more stress test and slimmed down system to hopefully provide more valuable homes for our citizens.
Thank you. Moving on.